is be true to what you said on paper.
Well, welcome back to the second hour of At the Round Table with MAMLEO. I'm your host, Larry Ellison. In studio with my brothers from another. Now, other brother has joined us this morning here. My brother, the Road Scholar, is here. He's a little late, but rather late than never. The Road Runner, beep beep. And Dr. Bradley is here in the house here. Here to give you a checkup from the neck up.
We're not doing very well.
We're not doing very well.
We're
not. And we want to thank our sponsor, Cruise Construction. Cruise Construction, building the future. Also our sponsor, The Money Store, for all your mortgage needs. Get branch manager Cora Holbrook a call at area code 508-345-4726. That's 508-345-4726. Again, you are listening to At the Round Table with MAMLEO, and we are glad and excited to have back with us our brother from another city council. I want to be respectful of titles, but I consider City Councilor Ed Flynn as part of the family, someone that I've known his dad. So I'm going to be respectful of his title, but folks, if I slip up, it's because we've known each other long enough where we're a little bit informal with each other. And that's a good thing with politicians. That's rare today that you build relationships with politicians. There's usually walls being built though. So we want to welcome District 2 City Councilor Ed Flynn back to the broadcast. You've probably been on here more than any other politician in the city.
Well, thank you, Larry. I love coming here. It's a great program. It's a great station. Mm-hmm. It's a wonderful opportunity to be with you, but to be with your listeners as well, and have great respect for you and have great respect for MAMLEO as well, because I know the incredible and important role MAMLEO plays, not just here in Boston, but across Massachusetts. So we're really proud of the outstanding work of the minority law enforcement officers throughout Massachusetts.
Right. We appreciate that because, in these times where things, people consider, they look at DEI and they see it as affirmative action, is not. We know that this is a diverse city and you need a diverse workforce, right? Not in policing and in every aspect of the city, on the council, because you get different opinions, different ideas. And I say that because that is the reason why I feel like we have a very good relationship, because we built it over time, right? We've got to know each other, because sometimes we look at what some person looks like or with how they speak, and we judge them. We don't get to know them, right? And we get to know them, we get more comfortable with the person, right? Because I tell people, crazy people, idiot, they come in all colors, all shapes, all forms. So I thank you for that. So we're going to jump right in. Like I said, if you have any questions or comments for City Councilor Ed Flynn, the District 2 Councilor, give him a call. And I know there are things happening across the city. So, Councilor, I want to get right into, something that is near and dear to me. And we're going to talk about crime and some solutions. But the mass and cast situation, and I know it affects your district, but it affects the whole city, because I've seen part of the solution for the city was putting up more fencing, and now it's kind of to disperse it across the city. Has there been any solution or any real movement in dealing with the problem as far as getting the people the treatment that they need and the housing that they need, rather than just dispersing it across the city so it doesn't look as bad in one spot?
Larry, I think that's the number one question in the city. And to answer you directly, I don't think we have made progress. I don't think we have a plan. I actually think the situation at Mass and Cass has gotten worse over time. And I represent the South End. I represent South Boston, the Andrew Square area that is impacted. But I also represent downtown Boston, Chinatown. But the Mass and Cass area, as you mentioned, has spread out. Obviously, Nubian Square, parts of Dorchester. But people don't have the right to use drugs in public. People certainly don't have the right to sell drugs. But I think people need drug treatment. They need detox. But if you're not going to detox and you're not going to drug treatment, you don't have the right to be on the street selling drugs or using drugs. I encourage the mayor to have a zero tolerance policy on that. Give everybody the opportunity to get into treatment. That's what I did as a probation officer. But if you're not willing to take the help, that does not give you the right, in my opinion, to use drugs on someone's stairs as an elderly lady is trying to get down, or take the kids to school or go shop and go to work. It's these quality of life issues and public safety concerns that are really having a significant negative impact here in Boston.
And what I just wanted to follow up with this quick, Dr. Bradley. I promise I'll let you, because I'm wondering if you know, right, a ballpark on what does it cost taxpayers? Because I think people don't really attach it to the taxpayer to say the city, but it's actually the taxpayers, right? What does it cost? Because I know there's police officers there on overtime, 24 hours a day. There are other city workers who are down there cleaning up and trying to assist. What would you estimate the cost is to the taxpayers of the city of Boston, just in Mass and Cass alone, a year?
It's significant. We also contract out a lot of that public safety support as well to a public safety company. We actually contract out a lot of the quality of life issues, picking up needles as well.
Okay.
New Market Square, the Business Improvement District. I don't have a ballpark figure, but let me say this: that they say 80 to 85% of the people down in Mass and Cass hanging around using drugs, they have housing, and they go down to Mass and Cass to get drugs, use drugs, or to sell drugs, but they are housed.
That's interesting.
So housing really is not a problem. The city has done as much as they can for them with housing, but Boston just can't be a place where you come from across New England because you get social services here, and you get a house, you get health care. We're compassionate people, but at some time you don't have enough money for that.
Right.
But as a probation officer at Suffolk Superior, we would get people on probation from all over the state, Franklin County, Hampden County, Hampshire County. The sheriff would literally put you on a bus with a one-way ticket and say, "We have a beautiful place for you in Boston. It's called the Pine Street Inn." And go to the Pine Street Inn, and they'll have a nice place for you, and check in with your probation officer. They get to the Pine Street Inn. Obviously, there's no room for them there.
And they end up down at...
And they end up at Mass and Cass.
Yeah. Dr. Bradley, you want to go
Well,
ahead?
actually, he just hit on one of the questions that I have, but another question was, I shouldn't say unfortunately, I should say fortunately, my children in the academic, the college academic life. And because of that, I'm all over the country. And I just recently come back from San Francisco, as well as Chicago. And what I noticed, my wife and I, we were both retired police officers. We noticed that there were congregations similar to Mass and Cass in various cities that we have gone through. And I asked myself the question, have cities come together to talk about how do they deal with that, address that issue? Because while we're recreating the wheel,
Best
someone may have
right?
already put in a very good practice.
Right.
When I was the director of 911 in the city of Boston, we used to come together, all the 911 directors came together to talk about how to deal with situations like what happened in New York. What are the best practices? And what I found was I was able to pull things from different parts of the country. So is that something happening?
Well, let me just jump in and then we'll call up. We're going to get to your call. I think to your point, what usually happens when they do send, it's usually the person who is not going to be implementing the program, right? It's usually the mayor or some of their cabinet person. It's not the person.
I was going to go there.
Go ahead.
I was going to. That becomes most impactful when you bring in someone, pointing that to someone who will actually be involved in implementing the whole situation. Not someone up here, but someone who's going to be the boot on the ground.
Right.
So can you get those people together to start talking about how do you do it?
Right.
Because I think you see this problem all over the country, and Boston's not the only place.
No.
I hear what you're saying because you're absolutely correct. Boston is the major city in New England, so everybody want to gravitate here for those opportunities. But how do we deal with that issue? And other cities have already done it.
Let's grab this call. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the roundtable. Appreciate your patience.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Deke here. How we doing?
Good. How are you?
Yeah. Look here, calling in regards to a serious problem. The bottom line on the city level, that the people have spoken. We have Nubian Square, Nubian Station, and so for the last few years, in terms of the, I'm the director of the Black Community Information Center, and a component of the Information Center is the Nubian Square Coalition. And so essentially we've been focusing on, we want the Nubian Library name, and it's what the community wants. So essentially what it is a few years ago, David Leonard, who's president of the library system, he said, yes, in fact, he has stated that they recognize the fact that there's a strong sentiment in the Roxbury community for the Nubian Library name. So he invited me down to a trustee board meeting, and via Zoom a few years ago, and he said the issue of the name would not come up. But at that time, the trustee board chair for the library, at the conclusion, he said, well, it's been fortunate not to have a new name for the library, seeing as how it's been rehabbed. I proposed that it be called the Roxbury Public Branch Library. We were stunned. So essentially what has happened in terms of moving forward is we've been stonewalled because the community wants that name. Now we come to find out that we've been lied to because of the fact that the library system does not have the power to change, and I'm sure the council knows this, does not have the power to change the name of a building. So we've been lied to. So now, consequently, what has happened at the last minute, what's going on is that in pushing forward for wanting this name, that we've been informed, well, first of all, a couple of folks who've come forward in terms of saying, well, there's a proposal at the last minute, and of course, be clear, we respected Sarah and Shaw, that it be called the Shaw Library, Roxbury. And so, come to find out that the one who's really been orchestrating this whole thing in the background has been Mayor Wu, in terms of trying to deny us.
So I get it, because I saw the email you sent out. So I guess because for the sake of time, is that are you directing that question to City Councilor Flynn?
The full board, including the council, because of the fact that what's going on is that you have the Public Facilities Commission that makes the final decision.
So is that something that the City Council could weigh in on? I don't know. Do you guys have any authority
I
over
would hope so, because
libraries?
let me just close with this by saying that what is going on is that.
So I'm gonna let him. I'm gonna let him answer your question. He's asking.
I'm just saying August 2nd
Yeah.
should be a public meeting for the community, and what they're saying is that there's going to be a Public Improvement Commission meeting on the decision, and they're going to do it via Zoom, so that way they know that there won't be any people there, and they're going to do this backdoor thing. So we're really upset about the fact that the people want.
I'll let him.
I'll
let him respond.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for that call. And I have followed that issue, not as closely as I should have. It's not necessarily in my district, but I'm very familiar with it. I was listening to his a video Senator Wilkerson had on Facebook. I watched her, but I talked to some other people in the Roxbury community. From what I gather, is the residents voted. It was a non-binding referendum, but the residents voted to name the library Nubian Library, overwhelmingly. And I think the residents made their voice clear. They were concise. They were direct that they wanted that name. Does it seem like at the last minute that they're not getting to call the library the Nubian Library, even though the residents wanted it? I think that's the case. So it's disappointing. It's discouraging, especially when the residents voted for something. But I guess the question is, well, what does the city council do about it? Do they have any jurisdiction on it? They do if they want to.
Okay.
They do if they want to, and if they don't, if they don't want to get involved in it, then they won't get involved. But they do have the ability to get involved if they have the courage to get involved and speak out. You also have 4 at-large city councilors that have jurisdiction really over the Roxbury area. I know you currently don't have a district city councilor, but you do have 4 district councilors, and count me in as someone that supports the Roxbury community as well.
See, and this is where, you just alluded to, it says that Tanya Fernandez Anderson has resigned.
Yep.
So now that leaves a void, and issues come up even though people resign. This is why behavior, and we'll get a little bit into that a little bit, of the members on the council, because one of the times you were here, and it shocked me when you talked about there was really no training for city councils when they come on the job. There's no, like, they don't
What?
go to a retreat. Yeah.
No handbook, nothing like that.
No handbook, no
No,
handbook.
and you tried to bring something to that, and it was rebuffed, and so they're like, "Oh, well, I got elected. That's all I need to know." And here we are, right? There is nothing like exactly people who are in control of, putting together a budget of billions of dollars, and we don't even know if they have the ability or what their prior experience was.
So how do you learn this through osmosis or something?
You cross your fingers.
And this was brought up on the national level when OCA got elected. Cortez, she could not believe the fact that when they went to Congress for their training, it was basically corporations giving them legislation that they want them to lobby for. She's like, "Wait, I came here to represent the people, not the corporations. What is this?" And that was their training. They're like, "That's not training."
Right.
Well, Siddiqui, thank you. Is any final you wanted to say to the councilor before we let you go?
Just whatever energy that the council can exercise. Because I know a year or two ago, the council did pass a resolution unanimously supporting the name, and so we have reached out to some of the citywide councils, like Council Flynn has talked about. But we've got no response. But as of August 2nd, they're trying to pull off this backdoor deal with this so-called Zoom session because they know no one will be there. And we want it to be in person at the library on the 2nd.
Could you give me a call Monday? I'd love to talk to you about it. I do want to support the residents if the residents on this. Okay.
All right. Thanks, Siddiqui.
All right, thanks.
So, want to pivot back to the Mass and Cass, because in September there is a charter school that is going to be moving into there, and that concerns me greatly because they were rebuffed. They wanted to build it in Rosendale near where the mayor and that community said we don't want it here, and they were forced because there's really no other place to build up. They're building it down there, so we're going to have young students traipsing through that. That's the image that they're going to be seeing, because we already see it in the Mason School, some of the other schools, the Needles that are impacted by that. What's being done, if you know, to make sure these kids are not being traumatized there, because it's just traumatic driving through.
It is, and the closest MBTA stop really is Andrew Square, which is the red line, and it's it's about, I don't know, quarter mile, half mile walk to Mass and Cass, but there really is no direct MBTA stop. The buses certainly go there as well, but public safety for the students and their families going to school should be a top priority for this summer for BPS and for Boston Police. But we need to provide a safe learning environment and a safe environment for these students to get to school. Right now, it's not there. I was watching the news last night, Channel 25 had something on Mass and Cass, and the residents of the South End, and I agree with them. They said it's the worst now in the South End that they've ever seen in 50 years.
Yeah, and Mayor Wu ran on that. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the roundtable. You have a question or comment for the councilor?
Yes, good morning, everyone. This is T. Michael Thomas. How you guys doing?
Good morning, T.
Good morning, T. Michael.
I have a question for the council. I know, Councilor Flynn, you cannot answer for every other councilor, but this is one that has been not being addressed, the elephant in the room. Let me start. I'll make it quick. During COVID, a lot of families in this country, in this Commonwealth, lost their homes, their businesses, their lives, even like myself, my program, because of lack of funding. The federal government sent in money to Boston, carved out to different communities, different groups, especially specifically for the ones that was hit the hardest, which was the black and brown community. Follow me so far?
I do, yep.
Okay, so $100+ million that was specifically designated for the black community in Boston. It was sat on by the leadership of the mayor's office, now taken and given towards a billionaire developer to do White Stadium, and no one is addressing that.
Okay. Well,
That is
good.
that is criminal. Let's follow the law. Let's follow the
I'll
Constitution.
let him
No
answer.
one in that city body is addressing that criminal act by this mayor, and I want to know why.
I'll let him answer it. I'm not going to call it criminal. We don't have anything that alludes it to be criminal. I get what you're saying, but
Well, we're cops, so we think of it differently.
Right, exactly. Alleged criminal behavior. But, Counselor?
Yeah, thank you, T. Michael. And, just to, as you probably know, I came out against the project immediately. I think Councilor Aaron Murphy did as well. Many councilors, you are right, did not want to offer an opinion. They wanted to stay neutral on it. And especially the at-large city councilors, they didn't want to get involved in the issue. They didn't want to take sides. But
That is their job.
that's
They're
their
at
job.
large, right?
Unfortunately, you can't pick and choose what issues you want to work on. You take the issues that are in front of you. Some of them are controversial. Some of them are not. Some of them you're going to make enemies for life. Some of them, you'll do the right thing and you provide positive leadership. But you do every issue you work on. Someone's going to get upset with you, but you can't use that as a basis for not getting involved. And you are right. My fellow colleagues did not want to get involved in White Stadium. They did not want to hold the city administration accountable. They did not want to ask difficult questions and explore what impact this would have on the city, what impact this would have on parking and transportation, on our BPS kids, on Franklin Park community as well. So those questions are unresolved. You're exactly right.
Thanks. Anything
Last
else?
question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Go.
Last question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hopping on this reason being the same active mayor. I received a state grant around the COVID time, which I completed in good standards, but was put out there that T. Michael received money, right, from the city. No, it came from the state. I completed the grant. It's public information. You could go on the state website. You could see it was completed in good standards in the eyes of the Commonwealth who distributed the cash. My question again is, Counselor, that when funds are given for a specific reason, and I'm hopping on it because I had folks in my program that reoffended, got incarcerated when there was funds there, and this administration did not appropriate the funds. You're talking $100 million when she asked at Councilor Anderson to step aside when that only involved $13,000.
I got to speed you
I'm
up
not
because
offended.
I got other calls we got to get to. So
I'm sorry.
No. So go ahead. I'll let him answer your question.
But that
Yeah.
was my point.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, T. Michael. I called for a thorough review investigation of all federal funds the city of Boston received, investigation from those ARPA funds. I don't know where they went. I don't know if the money was spent appropriately. I do know the city has a dashboard where you can check on it, but that's not enough information for me to make a sound judgment. I have asked for an investigation into federal funds to ensure that we spent the funds appropriately in the city. My city council colleagues blocked me. They did not want to go forward with that investigation, but eventually I do think we'll have to investigate the funds that the city received from the federal government.
But also, when you're raising taxes and you're spending more money, I think people have a right to know what the money is that
They
you
do.
spent, right?
They do.
And how it's being spent, right? And somehow it's not their money, and that's the thing is, it's not. No disrespect to you, it's not your money,
Right.
It's the taxpayers' money, and they have a right to it because you keep asking for more of it every year. And we don't have an accountability of what you did with the previous money and when there was a surplus of money. Because now, I want to get into we're running into a deficit now where we're saying, oh, now we have to cut. What, we spending money like drunken sailors? Because it makes no sense.
I think next year and years after that, you're going to see significant cuts in city services. I think you're going to see a dramatic increase in property taxes for residents and for businesses as well. I don't want to scare anyone or I don't like to give bad news, but I like to be honest and direct with people. But I think that's what's going to happen here in the city, but also across other cities as well.
Caller, good morning. Welcome to the roundtable.
Hello, good morning. This is Jamal. How you doing?
Good morning, brother.
morning.
Good morning, Jamal.
All right. So, you may remember some years ago, and every time I hear the city council talk about anything dealing with, ethics and all this type of thing being brought up, I get hives. Because, as you may remember, a couple years ago, I suggested, the denaming of the James Kelly Bridge in South Boston, as well as the denaming of the Albert Dapper O'Neill Room inside City Hall. Now, one, of course, is a state issue, and I went and to the proper channels, and that, as you've expressed, the renaming or denaming of the Jim Kelly Bridge is harder to do. It's a less popular concept, but most people agree that the Dapper O'Neill name should be removed from City Hall, and that is something that could be done between the city council and the mayor's office. We can get that done Monday. So, and if you need, I can come down there, bring my screwdriver, my little drill set. I'll take the plaque right off the wall. Easy.
Old school.
Exactly.
No
but I really
charge.
do want to ask about that issue, because all this talk about ethics and all that, and I really do believe that as the council moves forward and tries to preserve its integrity and honor and dignity and all this, I think that there needs to be something addressed about the past bad actors who were notorious in their racism, misogyny, homophobia, etc., etc.
Council, you want to respond?
Yeah, let me respond. I know I talked to Jamal about this several times, but I agree that the Dapper O'Neill Room, I think it's a ZBA, where ZBA takes place up at City Hall. I do think that should be renamed. I don't think it's appropriate to name a room after him. And I'm for that going forward to address that, whether that's through city council action or not. But I do agree with you, Jamal, on the city on Dapper
And we can
O'Neill.
rename it the Siddiqui Cambone Room. That's a joke.
Yeah.
May-
I think we all got that one.
Maybe we could name it after State Representative Mel King
Or Sarah Shaw,
or
right?
Sarah. Yeah, any. There's a lot of wonderful people
Right.
that have done
A lot of
a
work.
lot of great work here, and let's talk about that.
All right. Thanks, Jamal.
All right, thank you, sir.
Appreciate
Have
it.
a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Before we grab this other call, I want to pivot a little bit. Like I said, every time you come, the phones ring off the hook, so that's a good thing. Right? People
I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. It's a bad thing for me.
So, Counselor, I want to pivot to the schools, right? Over a year ago, you wrote a letter in support. For full disclosure, I'm part of Boston Tea Leaves. It's a violence reduction program we've been trying to implement in the Boston public schools. We've made no traction whatsoever. We haven't been able to get one school because of all the bureaucracy at the bowling building, the BPS headquarters, to get that program. We've been able to implement it in Brockton and in other surroundings, and it's been welcomed, and they see the benefit of it, right? I don't understand why Boston is the schools are so closed-minded, because and now we're closing schools. We've seen the violence in the schools. You've been on this block. You've been public about the violence that has taken place, not just in the city, but around not just in the schools, but around the city as it relates to our young people. What is it, if anything, the council can do with programs like, and it's paid for. So this isn't something that's even going to cost the city a dime, to get these type of programs to help the staff at the school that would help to quell some of the violence that's taking place in our schools.
I think the Boston public school system has to reevaluate how they deal with public safety issues inside the school buildings, in and around the school buildings as well. I don't think they can just have a hands-off attitude. They have to be more proactive in addressing safety for students, safety for teachers and cafeteria people, staff as well. But it's about listening, and you have to acknowledge, I think, that BPS doesn't have all the answers. If you're BPS and you have all the answers, then you're excluding so many people with good ideas. I think they have to be more open-minded and listen to residents across the city, listen to business people that have good proposals, and welcome them to offer suggestions on how we work together to provide the best environment for learning and teaching. And at times, I think we don't have that type of that type of environment at BPS to do that. I don't know if it's more of a logistic issue, or we're not able to reach the right people, but there's something missing at BPS in terms of their executive structure that doesn't encourage the communications from residents.
No, I totally agree, and it doesn't, it's not welcoming to outsiders, right? Or what they perceive to be outsiders, people who are there to help, not to blame. And I think they see anyone coming in talking about some of the problems they have and working with them as, oh, you're blaming me. No one's blaming you for that. But also, before we grab this call, Council, I want to, we're increasing the budget for the school. I think it's the largest portion of the city budget is the schools, right? It's up near 1.4, 1.5 billion with the B dollars, right? But we're closing schools, so why the increase in cost with the decline in population and the shuttering of doors? It just defies. If I'm looking at this from a business perspective, if we have less people, we have less buildings, why is it costing us more to operate?
I agree, and we're spending close to $180 million on transportation alone.
Wow.
And enrollment, for the most part, is down. We are transporting students all over the city, sometimes out of the district as well. I think the BPS really needs to have two leaders. One, a superintendent that works on the academics, the studying in services for students, and then I think they need a superintendent or an executive officer that deals more with the administrative finance functioning aspect, safety. I think it's too big of a job for one person to do all of it. It might be the most difficult job in the city of Boston, and for one person to do it, I think it's a little unfair. We're setting someone up for failure, but it can't be done by one person. There's tremendous burnout as well with our senior school administrators that work for the superintendent. There's constant turnover, change, and constant change in the schools as well. And the schools are closing. The students are learning, and the teachers are teaching in old buildings. There was a report 2 weeks ago during those heat waves where students were trying to learn. There was no AC, and it was 95 degrees in the room. You can't learn like that, or you can't teach like that.
No. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the roundtable.
Good morning. I had two questions for this counselor. My first question is, again, I'm trying to put this in an outline. I see many people, the bicyclists, the cyclists, and people who use the motor vehicles, the motor bicycles, on the sidewalks more than they do on the bike lanes. And the worst thing is it's a public safety hazard because I have to constantly dodge the ones that's coming from the opposite direction. In other words, I got to watch my back whenever the cyclists, the bicyclists, and the ones who use the motorbikes behind me to make sure I'm not trying to get killed or injured. And it's frustrating. I feel like I'm about to die instantly because they don't use the bicycle lanes. How come they don't use the bicycle lanes, which is designed for them to be on the streets, not on the sidewalks? And number two, I know you can't speak for the city councilors or the at-large ones or the mayor, but I would support T. Michael Thomas, People's Academy. Why is the mayor and the city councilors at large are so scared of giving people an alternative for college, because college is not for everybody to go to, and support this man in giving people, Dorchester, Washington, Manhattan, access to the middle class?
All right, I'll let him answer. Before you do the bike lane, I agree. Boston is not designed for bike lanes. Certain cities could support it, right? But the vast majority of the city is not designed for it. I know you want to talk about that a little, because we're seeing such a blowback, but yet we're still considering the mayor wanting to allocate funding for more bike lanes in the city when there's a shortage of funding. That money could be redirected towards something that people actually want. Their taxes lowered, right? Then bike lanes. So
Yeah, it's not a city that is designed for magnificent bike lanes like other places. And the bike lanes that we do have, in my opinion only, were poorly designed and implemented.
Yeah.
And the other thing that is bothering me too is residents feel, and I agree with them, that their voice was not heard during that period of time when the city just decided where the bike lane would go. Residents said, well, maybe not that street, but maybe a street over, or maybe on this side. But the city did not listen to them. But the answers really need to come from the residents, not from City Hall. On one issue relating to the bike lane, the blue bikes vote. We had a vote Wednesday at the City Council to accept a 10-year contract that the city would sign with blue bikes. I voted against it. I think I was the only city councilor, but we voted on a contract we know little about, a 10-year contract that we have to pay, and I think it's setting the city up for failure. When you sign a contract for 10 years, there's no accountability. There might be a new mayor, a new city council in 5-6 years. Why give them that burden to deal with?
Council, we know, I've seen, you probably see, I see more homeless people riding those blue bikes than people, and we know you need a credit card, and if they have one, it's probably not theirs,
right?
that are on these bikes. So, and they're on every corner of the street, of the city, but also, we've got these speed humps on every street now, right? And I've talked to some of my colleagues who are former police officers myself, and they're saying how it really impacts response time to emergencies, because if you're going down the street and you need to get there quickly, you can't, not saying you want to be, but there are times when you need to get there a lot quicker, and you've got to stop every 2 seconds because there's a speed bump, because if you don't, you're going to tear the bottom out of the cruiser or the fire truck. I mean, it's just, like you said, who is brought in to these conversations, if anyone, from the public? Or from emergency or from first responders?
Yeah, we don't have the leadership that is working on transportation issues in Boston, that is making sound decisions. I've made that clear for many years. Look at Cambridge Street, where Mass General Hospital is. You'll see ambulances waiting in traffic, going to with someone in the back. Maybe it's an elderly person that had a heart attack, and the street is back-to-back traffic. No one can move, and everyone's beeping at each other. And this is the greatest hospital in the world, Mass General Hospital, and people can't get there. It's poorly designed, poorly implemented, and that department does not have the proper leadership to implement bike lanes in the city of Boston.
Thank you, caller. I appreciate it. And then I think to expand on that a little bit more. Then you have all of these delivery, right? These mopeds and these bikes. So I mean, I came in the city the other day, and since I've retired, I don't have to come in the city as much. Thank God. Not because I don't like the city, but what discourages me is it took me, when I came into Mattapan Square, it took me almost 45 minutes to get to Nubian Square, and that's no exaggeration.
Right.
And now they're talking about also putting I didn't realize, a bus lane
in the middle of Blue Hill Avenue.
Did you know that?
No, that's stupid.
I went to that meeting 2 weeks ago at the Carter Post on Blue Hill Avenue, and that's exactly what they want to do, is put a bus lane in the center of Blue Hill Avenue. But the residents are against it, the businesses are against it, but the city is for it. And the city wants to go forward with it, even though the residents are against it. So it's discouraging.
Yeah, I was in San Francisco dropping my daughter off on her clinical rotation, and I noticed that San Francisco has a couple of things that my wife and I said could never happen in Boston. One was the bus lane. So it's interesting to hear you say that, because Boston is just not. It was the streets were actually laid out for cow paths going to the Boston Common.
That's right.
So it was not actually built for that. The second thing that I noticed was driverless vehicles, what they call Waymos.
Yep.
And I never thought I would live long enough to see a car operating perfectly without a driver, you know. And I said to my wife, can we have that in Boston? And she said, absolutely not. Boston, like, again, is a smaller city. It's not laid out. So I think when you say that, there need to be someone focusing directly on transportation.
Well, let me tell you where I think this came from. You know where the mayor's chief of staff is from?
San Francisco?
San Francisco.
Oh.
Okay, and I'll just let me just.
I didn't know that.
Two things
Okay.
I'd like to point out. How has it been working on is that Seaver Street in Columbia?
Columbus Ave.
How's that the center lane thing? How's that been working out for them?
You know how many seniors have been run over or trying to get out to the middle to get on the bus?
And number two, in regards to that, is the fact that when you mentioned the fact that it works in San Francisco, okay, they're having a test pilot here with those Waymo cars. They are having the test pilot going on here, but as you mentioned, all the speed bumps, all the potholes, the traffic, the congestion here is ridiculous.
Well, I mean, I must confess here that the Waymo was driving better than I was. You know, I mean, it was on target, but I don't see it working in Boston because of the streets.
Yeah, that's
But the other piece to that is that Boston has become more populated, right? Where, you know, this study probably would have worked when we probably got close to 1 million people that are actually living in the city of Boston, and more than that are in the city every day.
Right.
Because there's been an increase in housing built, and not affordable, but housing, right? So you have to take into consideration that there are more people who are in vehicles or even if they're on bikes. It's just not designed for that.
Larry, I see people like you do. I think Boston's like the wild, wild west around here. But I see people on these electric school e-bikes, they call them, scooters basically. They're going fast and they don't have a helmet on. And they're driving through traffic with potholes and with speed humps and with bicycles going through red lights.
Yeah.
And
Good point.
so I was listening to these doctors and nurses at the emergency room, and they said to the doctors said, someone asked them the question, what would you tell your child if your child lived in Boston? And the answer was from these doctors and nurses, don't drive a bicycle without a helmet. Don't use an e-bike at all. They're seeing so many injuries because of the dangerous driving in Boston. And I think anyone that drives a bicycle should have a helmet on.
I agree.
I'm trying to implement that. People are fighting with me in City Hall about it.
No, I've seen families, tourists come in, rent a whole family, everyone's on a bicycle. I'm like, Boston drivers are not considerate, and none of them had helmets on. And like, that's a recipe for disaster.
But also, if you're going to have that, you need to have some type of enforcement. And I'm not advocating penalizing people. But if you're gonna have people, we don't have a jaywalking here. We people, it's hard for things to move, so people become more aggressive because they know if one person steps off the sidewalk in an area like downtown, everybody's following behind them, no matter what color the light is.
That's right.
But if the police can't do anything, the meter maids, no one can stop that, so the traffic never moves. So it's just gridlock.
Yeah. Well, the other thing we have a problem with is the street lighting in Boston. Let me give you an example. If you're at Summer Street, you know where Summer Street is, in Melcher Street, just going over the bridge. So if you're a pedestrian crossing, you have the right of way. But if you're the driver and you're in Summer Street, you're taking a right on Melcher, you also have the right of way. It's called concurrent jurisdiction.
Wow.
And I've asked my city council colleagues to ask the city of Boston to outlaw that practice. They agreed with me, and it's still in effect where both the pedestrian and the driver both have the right of way at the same time. That's a violation, in my opinion, of many public safety
and common
rules.
sense.
Exactly.
And common sense, that's what it is. Common sense.
Counselor, I wonder,
Common sense is not so common.
No.
Exactly.
617-282-0685, 617-282-0685. We're pleased to have in studio with us District 2 City Councilor Ed Flynn. I consider him a part of the family. I consider him a very good friend. So I know, and I tell people, the thing with friends is that you don't always agree. We haven't agreed on everything, but it doesn't make us enemies. And I think that's where healthy relationships come out of, right? Is that you can agree rather than, well, I can't talk to Larry about this because he's not going to agree, and then we won't be friends again. That's not healthy. Counselor, I want to ask you. Recently the Daily Table stores have closed.
Yes.
And I don't know if you're familiar with the Daily Table. We're affordable farm to table type of stores, in particularly communities of color, where it was very affordable. It was almost a spinoff from some of the folks from Whole Foods, where people could go and get a good meal, a healthy meal, and vegetable. Because a lot of places in the city are food deserts, or they're just not affordable. Whole Foods, we call it whole paycheck, right?
Yeah,
where
right.
It's healthy, but it's not affordable for the vast majority. And one was in Nubian Square, another one had opened up in Mattapan Square, and there was one on Washington Street near Park Street.
And it's actually one in Salem.
And there was one in Cambridge as well. And they've all recently closed down, and that's having a huge impact because that was someplace that was affordable for a lot of the people in the city. Because Boston has become very expensive to live. I mean, and also, how is that impacting? Because you're in charge with city employees who are mandated to live in the city. Like for police officers, you have to live your first year. But imagine being a librarian or someone who's not making a lot of money. Is that impacting? Because I remember seeing something in the paper where there were certain specific jobs that they couldn't fill because the requirement to live in the city, right? Something to do with cutting trees down and all that. So is that impacting the city?
It's impacting the city big time. In these salaries that city employees make, most of the city employees don't make a good salary. And a lot of retirees are struggling with their retirement as well. I was at a store in my neighborhood recently, and we talked about the price of food for many of these workers. And there was a woman that was looking at a can of Campbell soup, chicken noodle soup, and she's looking at it. And I said to her, what are you looking at the can of soup for? And she said she was studying it. She said, the price, And I said, what's wrong with the price? She said it went up 10 cents. For me that's not an issue, but for her,
it's a major issue.
It's a major issue,
right.
And I thought about that. And my job is not about me. My job is about what's in her best interest.
Right.
And I learned something from those types of conversations. Is your job is to represent the people. It's you do what's best for the residents of Boston, but the residents of Boston are struggling. When you're going to a store and you don't know if you can buy a loaf of bread or a can of soup or a can of peas, in a lot of these supermarkets, as you mentioned, Larry, they're closing. When they close, that will just mean the bigger corporations will consolidate, and the price will go higher at some of these bigger places.
And on top of that, I thought it was honestly, and I don't know where you were on it, but when the city voted to charge people for bags in the city of Boston, I think it's just. To me, it's just another tax. I mean, who goes to the store and to carry their groceries out in their hand? I mean,
well, again, they have the option of bringing their own bags. But to me, the issue was the Daily Table. Although it was a great alternative, it wasn't promoted properly for everyone in the city to know about it. Because I found out about it because someone that definitely did not need to go to the Daily Table was going there. Oh, this is a great place to get food.
Right.
And I'm but it's made for the people in the neighborhood. But most of the people in the neighborhood walk by it, they don't know the the value of it, and that's what I think the problem was in communicating.
But we also know that the city's like you said, it's going to be, because it's got to come from somewhere. Where if this bill passes in Congress, it's going to cut food stamps, it's going to cut WIC, it's going to cut funding to schools, and that's going to be absorbed. It trickles down, right? The state is already talking. Everyone's talking about deficits, and the city's not going to be immune from that. How is the city preparing to handle that? Because there doesn't seem to be anywhere where there is always places you can trim, but they don't seem to be wanting to trim it where it needs to be trimmed. It's always the folks who the most in need that get affected the most.
I think we have to prepare now for a dramatic economic downturn in Boston's economy, in New England's economy as well, and make necessary preparations, because the economy in Boston and throughout New England is going to decline significantly. people in downtown Boston, they're still not coming back to work. People at City Hall are still working remote. The Zoning Board of Appeals is still remote. The Zoning Board of Appeals should be in person, so people, residents can go there, but also accountants and lawyers and others can go there, spend their money after going out for lunch. But the vacancies in these wonderful Boston buildings are very high.
So it was also, is there anything to address just the tax breaks that colleges and universities still get in the city of Boston? Because that's a huge advantage that they have compared to if I'm a homeowner and I own properties in Boston. I don't get to, to decide whether or not I'm going to pay this amount. I get the bill, I pay it, or they attach a lien.
Yeah, the pilot payment in lieu of taxes. Right. Many of the great colleges pay their fair share, but many don't. But it hasn't been, that reassessment hasn't been done in years. So they're basically paying the same rate they were paying, 15 years ago.
Right.
Wow.
Considering inflation and considering
and the buildup of how many buildings they've built since then.
Well, you're right, because Harvard University owns more property now in Alston and Brighton than they do in Cambridge.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Well, it actually used to be called Little Cambridge.
Little Cambridge,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, Council, we've got about 3 minutes left. Anything that you want to touch on? Also, reaching out to voters out there. I know you're up for re-election this year. This is me speaking. I think he's done a fantastic job there. No one is perfect, but you've always taken our calls.
He comes to the show.
Right. He's been a supporter of not just people in his district, but issues that affect people across the city. I thought he was an at-large council because he's everywhere.
Well, thank you, Larry, and I'm honored to represent District 2. I do have 2 challenges, but what I do is I come to work every day, try to provide positive leadership to my district and to the residents. I'm imperfect. I've made mistakes as a city council. I wish I voted different ways on particular issues, but I learned from those votes. I learned from mistakes, but I learned from people like you and the callers, and it's about listening. It's about respecting people, not thinking you have all the answers, but trying to be respectful to the residents of Boston, providing the best positive leadership you can under very difficult circumstances. But again, want to say thank you to you and these wonderful guys here, and especially MAMLEO, because we're really proud of the minority officers, the men and women across Massachusetts that, in my opinion, never got the respect that they deserved and they earned, but they continue to do the job representing the residents of Massachusetts. So that's what I respect most about MAMLEO. Thank you, guys.
And when is the primary?
The primary is early September, and then
is it after Labor Day?
Preliminary. It's after Labor Day.
I never understood that.
And then the final election is in November.
And there'll
also
be early voting, I'm assuming, again this year.
There'll be early voting starting like mid August, I think.
Yeah. Dr. Bradley, any final questions, comments for the?
I'm good, brother. I'm sitting back here in awe. I'm good.
Pastor Hobbs, are we at time?
Like 50 seconds.
Okay, so you got 30 seconds to make your pitch to your folks over in District 2.
Well, thank you again to my constituents in District 2. Just want to respectfully ask for your consideration once again. Respect the neighborhood, respect the diverse community. I represent the most residents living in public housing, critical. They're part of the city as well. And it's about working together, respecting each other. And again, want to ask for your vote in the preliminary election and in the final election. Thank you.
Thanks. Listen, I tell people, people show up. We've got to make this a regular, because when you come in, people get informed, but they also get a chance to speak to our elected officials in person and not behind the form where they don't have an opportunity.
Right.
So, thank you, District 2 City Councilor Ed Flynn.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Enjoy the rest of your weekend. You've been listening to At the Round Table with MAMLEO. Dr. Bradley.
Be blessed.
They say I am a dreamer, 'cause I still believe that anything is possible as long as you work hard. Hustle real hard, hustle real hard, hustle real hard, hustle. So if I never see ya, never get the chance to meet ya, no, I came up from the bottom, always rooting for the unknown. I wrote 300 songs in 1 year, Boogie will tell you I'm on it. I got unreleased songs for days, they don't want it. Eat any MC in the game, it ain't a challenge. If your music reflects who you are, then you's a coward. I can see through the lies you ain't living what you spitting. If your money's so long, why your dog's in prison? Why your baby mom's stripping, why your mom's still living in that same broken home that you used to sell piffin'? You ain't gotta lie to me to sell me a track. You ain't gotta rock fake jewels or walk around strapped. I respect artists getting money, but love them for spitting crack. And the fact that one track can move a family out the trap. It's a dream for us lost souls brought up in the mix. I'm motivated by the artists coming out in my midst. And the artists that paved the way when I didn't exist. Music's a skyscraper, I'm just trying to add a couple bricks.
This is for the dreamers. They say I am a dreamer. Cause I still believe that anything is possible as long as you work hard. Hustle real hard, hustle real hard. Hustle real hard, hustle so if I never see ya, never get the chance to meet ya, no, I came up from the bottom, always rooting for the underdog.
I always